Hello, ladies. I'm Mrs. Sherman. Welcome to Housewife Radio. I've designed this program so that you don't have to watch anything and you can listen as you work in your home or home make. It doesn't always have to be working, but it is home making. And so I have quite a schedule for you today to listen to, but first I want to show you my teacup. And I got it at Home Goods. It's by Gracie China, and it's dishwasher safe, although I don't put it in the dishwasher. It does. Dishwashers do wear down, sometimes wear down the design and the painting, so it's just easy for me to wash it. I love this, and it is sturdy. It's lightweight, and I got it. Like I say, I got it at Home Goods, and I like the color. It goes with my goes with my outfit today, which I got, by the way, at Walmart. This is one of the Time and True cardigans that they have, and I'm enjoying wearing it. It has a little cotton in it. It feels good. And we have slightly colder weather today, and I would like to show you one more thing that I'm totally enamored with, and that is the Pink Lady apple from the Mornington Peninsula of the state of Victoria, Australia. When I first was given one of these, it was on a birthday that I had, and my brothers, who had not had a birthday with me in something like 45 years, brought it to me and laid it in my hand like this. And I have been in love with the Pink Lady ever since. I got this at our local Safeway grocery store, and they're either being imported here from Australia or they're being grown here from, we have our own orchards out here. And that reminds me of a story, but I'm going to hold off on telling that. But these I have often cooked in a pan with no added water, just a lid, no sugar, no nothing, and made wonderful hot apples and put thick whipping cream on it with no added sugar or anything, and they're just delicious, very satisfying. And they're also very good eaten plain and raw. I also want to start out with our three things today, and I always begin with getting ready, getting emotionally and spiritually ready for the day and in the home, because this is an important place. And I think one of the problems that we're having, I think especially for people who have begun being homemakers after being out of college or school, is that they're used to getting up and going somewhere else. And so there's a bit of restlessness in the morning. And what I would suggest is to prepare your home the night before so that when you get up, you go to your tea station or coffee station and you turn on your music, or you, make it a comfortable place, and put some good smells around the house and enjoy it like you. Remember what I said last time, the things we go out for, we can often bring in and enjoy our homes more. And so also I think that the appearance, if you're not dressed yet, ladies, you can go and get started doing that. Even if it's noon, you can start, and you can always start your day over. If you haven't succeeded so far and you haven't got around to getting dressed, you can just get dressed and start the day from there. And so I would suggest you go and do that right now. Get your shower, get dressed, fix your hair and your face, and put on a happy smile. And there's nothing wrong with trying to improve your appearance, because even though I've got more years behind me than ahead of me, I'm always looking for a way to do a better job with my dress, my hair, my appearance, my face. I have, as you get older, you have different struggles with your skin, and I'm always looking for some way to make a better presentation. And so there's nothing wrong with trying to improve your appearance, and some social and cultural circles will try to. I know I've been in situations where as soon as you try to improve yourself a little bit, or someone hears of you wanting to do better in some way personally, they quickly cut you down and quickly tell you that that's conceit, or you think you're better than somebody else, Well, we don't think we're better than other people, but we know that we can rise from the mediocre. I'm better than mediocre. And so I'd like to encourage you to think that way, and not to think that it's a conceit, but to think that it is a necessary duty to your Lord and Savior Christ. and to remember that even Christ folded up his garment and left it in the tomb, and the cloth that he had. And so I always remembered that little touch there, that it's not conceited to want to be clean and neat and to wear pretty things for your family. This is a ministry to your home and to your family. We're always looking for ways, aren't we, to serve others and to do a better job of ministering to others. We're really interested, aren't we? You say the word ministry and everybody's eyes perks up, and everybody just lights up because they think that's really important. And so this is a ministry, and you can improve yourself. There's nothing wrong with it because you want to be pleasing to your Lord first of all. And you know, there's a scripture in Proverbs, when a man's ways please the Lord, even his enemies are at peace with him. And that's so interesting, you know, that you can cut down on one thing, one area of criticism, if you'll take care of your appearance. That will be good, because it gives a good reputation to homemaking. And someone might say, well, I agree that she should be homemaking, but she looks awful. So let's not let that happen. Okay, let's not let that happen to you. Now let's go on to the home and the house. You know, one of the things that helped me a little bit was in the 1980s, there was the home interiors movement. That it was a home party selling thing, which, of course, you know, they were selling something, but you could have one or go to one in someone's home, and there was a lady that would show you how to put together a scene on your wall, and they would be selling you a painting and maybe a little porcelain thing that went with it. For instance, a deer in the forest, and then they'd sell you the little porcelain deer to put on a shelf under it, and just kind of give your home a mood. They would teach you about lighting and sconces and candles and things like that. And many of us that didn't buy the things would go anyway to learn how these things were done, and then just go to the Goodwill and find things and spray paint them and put them together in a similar way. Well, this was really, really encouraging. And the lady who began that business considered herself a Christian and would not sell anything that was not wholesome. It had to be things, you know, that everyone in the family could enjoy and love, and that would express respect for God and for others. And so this was one of the things that I think encouraged a lot of homemakers at a time when we needed it, when we needed something to help us to be happy in our houses, in the home. You will be spending a lot of time in your home, and many of you will be spending time alone. So it is an isolating job, but it would not be the same otherwise. If you try to make this a social job, you can't get anything done. How many of you have had company and can't get anything done because it's just not conducive to cleaning house? And so it is isolating. You have to accept that, and what you do is you plan for things that are social by inviting people to you, to your home. And I found that the afternoon teas are the best thing, or the morning teas are the best thing. They're easy. It's cold food. Anybody can make a sandwich and store it and bring it back out later when company comes, and the tea is always hot. And I think that is the simplest way. It is the most, tea sounds real formal, doesn't it? Because, you know, you've got these fancy teacups, but actually it is the most informal way to entertain. And I have a piece of clear plastic on my tablecloth, so I don't care about spills or anything. It doesn't even bother me if someone were to chip a teacup, because there's more where that came from. And that's an old saying that we were taught from the time we were little. If we broke something, don't worry about it, dear, there's more where that came from. And so you have to also have there's nothing wrong. We're going to go on to homemaking now. Now that we've got it straightened out, that let me just summarize the dress part. It's a ministry to other people. You want to serve other people by looking your best and reflecting God's beautiful creation. And the first thing people will see, I believe, is your hair, but then your eyes. And your eyes are really important because they're, like they say, the eyes are the mirror of the soul. They'll reflect your optimism. They'll reflect your softness. They'll reflect your happiness. They'll reflect so many things. And your optimism about life or your love about life. So that's really, really important. And if you think about those things, then that you'll be taking care of yourself a lot better. And the third thing they'll notice is what you're wearing. So, and this face here, this is where you minister from, is your face. So you don't want to be showing a lot of bare flesh or attraction to parts of your body that don't actually speak to people. So that's why I emphasize, covering yourself, wearing a dress, wearing a long skirt, and of course I wear leggings under mine, and also in colder weather, that's so important. And so, but prettiness, wear things that inspire you, wear things that make you feel pretty, that you enjoy wearing. And so we go on to the home and the house. There is nothing wrong, ladies, with having an idea of improving your house. And I guess they would call that a dream. But for me, it's the idea that I always have looking forward to something I want to improve. Eventually, I want to repaint. But first, I have a couple of hot spots I need to take care of, bookshelves and boxes of things I want to go through. And my goal is that's motivating me. You see, if I can get that done, then I give myself permission to paint and to rearrange. And so there's nothing wrong with having those goals. And of course, there are always people that will tell you that's not spiritual, that's materialistic. Well, we live in a material world, and we are working with materials because that's what God gave us. And so we have to be here working around material things. And so we might as well do our best and be good stewards of it. Now, when I am come to the point where I have gotten more organized in other areas, you have to understand too, never be judgmental over people who have accumulated something, because I learned the hard way that it'll come back on you. And I'll give you an example. My mother and my mother-in-law had pieces of furniture that were just jammed full of books, drawers full of pens and pencils, and I used to wonder how that happened. How come they can't keep up with that? And especially, they had no children at home. But what happens when you get a little older and your children are grown? You start getting busier in other areas that you were neglecting while they were growing up. You were putting those things off, and so you become more busy in other things. Well, eventually, I inherited the bookshelf and the other things that I had criticized for being so full of these things. And now, here it is, maybe 20 years later, and they look exactly like they did when I was criticizing my mother and mother-in-law for having so many pens, pencils, staples, and things. It was just exactly like that. And it's just because life just escalates. I always thought when I got older, I am going to sit in a rocking chair like the old-fashioned granny, and I'm just going to knit. It didn't work out that way. Life just escalates, and the responsibilities escalate. Things just get more complicated. And so this bookshelf just became full of things, and I still haven't cleaned it out. It's one of my hot spots. And so you have to have a goal, and I have a goal. When I get that all done, then I'm going to repaint. So I'm looking forward to that. So there's always that in the distance. And there's nothing wrong with having those plans and those dreams of having the kind of house you really like. I love to get on Pinterest, don't you, and look for ideas that would work with me. And so some of my other goals, I want to share them with you, and I hope that you will understand that when you get all these things done that you need to do, the dishes, the laundry, then you maybe have other goals of things that you're interested in that you'd like to do. Sewing, I want to do more sewing, do a complete new set of clothing, and I would like to write a few little booklets, and I'd like to improve the house and paint, wallpaper, different things like that. And so that is what I'm headed for, what I'm hoping for when I do all these other things that need to be done. Or, I have an idea for you in dealing with activities that are not very appealing, not very interesting. Well, I have an idea I want to share with you that I've used several times, and I don't know if this would apply to you. But I enjoy doing it, and that is there's a sameness, something that you're doing over and over. It's getting a little tedious, but you have to do it again and again, and I don't know what it could be, cleaning up something, washing something, folding something, cleaning out a shelf, whatever. Okay, so I got kind of sick of it one day, and I said to myself, I need some new aprons, and I need to try out some new recipes. I'm just tired of doing it the same all the time. So I started making things to wear on these dull jobs, like aprons or new clothes that I would sew, that I could sew quickly, and I looked forward to it a lot better because now I was not only doing the job, but I had made new clothes to wear for it. And I also thought, well, I'm doing this cooking and cleaning up. I want to try a new recipe, so get out my Tea Time magazine or Cook's Country or whatever it is, or my old cookbook, and try something else, maybe once in a while. And this helps me to look forward to it more. And it's the same with maybe you have. I remember years ago there was a little church social that I was obligated to go to because my husband was the minister there, and my not being there would reflect badly on him, and I needed to go. So I would go to this little social group that I had to go to that was supposed to be something, a Bible study and some other things, but I found that I was too restless, and I'm a little antsy. It's hard for me to sit still, and I got to where I didn't really want to go, and I didn't find it profitable for me. It was never about the home. It was never about Titus 2. It never was very helpful for me. But then I said, I need some new clothes. I'm going to make a new skirt for this that I wear on those days that I go to that meeting. So that's what I did, and made clothes for my children too. And so when we went there, we were we had at least 4 new outfits that we could rotate that were special for that time. And the other thing was I practiced my cooking because we all had to bring something. So I thought I'm going to find some stimulating new recipe and try it and use it to go. So you can always make a good thing out of something that has to be done that you don't like. So that's just an idea that you might be able to use, is take something that is undesirable and turn it into something that will benefit you and others in some way. And so, like, I learned this, I think, from Mr. S, who had a day timer. And I noticed when he was in meetings or in places where he had to listen to something for a long time, or, and he too likes to get things done. He's rather antsy too. He'd rather be home doing things. And he would take that day timer and he would write down all the ideas he had, and then he'd implement them later on. All the ideas for things he wanted to write, for things he wanted to do, for things he wanted to change in his office, for places he wanted to go. So that's one thing you can do. And so take a dull activity and make it useful in some way, benefit from it in some way. And so now I want to talk to you a little bit about people and about manners. I am not sure I can go an hour today, but hopefully you can press continuous play and run several of these videos together so you can hear it. And I hope you're not sitting here watching me, because these are designed for you to go and get something done while you listen. And I don't really have anything to read for you today, but maybe I can tell you a couple of stories and that might amuse you and keep you going and doing all these things that we have to do at home. So I would like to start out with, we're going to talk about people now, because we work around people, we work around our children, and we work around our husbands, and sometimes other people will say things and we don't quite know how to handle it, and there's no book, there's nothing that says what you should do, and you can always be accused of not saying the right thing or what you should have said and everything, but still there are no rules, So if someone says something about the way you handled something, say, well, tell me what book I could have used, what scripture could I have used for that, because sometimes people can say things that are very disturbing, and we're like deer in headlights. We don't quite know what to do, and if we ignore it, we're accused of being insensitive and ignoring it, and if we say something, we're accused of arguing. So what do you do? First of all, I would like to say, let's be sure and take care of ourselves first in our own manners. Manners flow outward into society. And that is so important, because when you're home, if you're treating your family like they are special people, like they have special souls, like they have, you could harm them spiritually by your attitudes. When you remember that they're brothers and sisters in Christ, they're not somebody to mistreat or to be rude to, then you will treat other people automatically the same way. Unfortunately, today, we have people who think that at home, you just lay back and kick back and behave boorishly. But when there's company, then you start to behave a little more formally and kindly. That it should be just the opposite. And the home is where, if you get used to having manners in the home, you will automatically have these manners at work and at other places in public. Like you would never, if you would never shout at someone in the home, or behave very rudely to someone in the home, then when you go to the grocery store, you're not going to shout at somebody for walking in front of you, or for getting in line ahead of you, or some little irritation like that. And if you teach your children how to overcome these irritations, how to give up their own will in order to be peaceful, sometimes, and I'm not talking about that in relation to something bigger, because there are some times when you have to put your foot down over some things. Your manners at home have to be so instilled in you, so ingrained in you, so inbred in you, that you can't let them go. You cannot forget them. So that at home, you're so kind and loving to each other and so respectful to each other, and you don't talk back to your mother. I'm talking to young people now. You don't criticize your mother and father, and you don't talk back to them, because this is part of who you are. And that way, when you're out somewhere, you don't treat them badly either. That might be hard to digest. You might want to think about that a little bit. And so be careful about your own manners. So now, let's discuss a couple of things about. I talked to you before about these weasel words, or words that change their meanings or just kind of slither around and people use them and you're not quite sure what they're saying. But years ago, a homemaker, now see, this attack on homemakers wasn't always, now if you're not being bothered, don't, say, oh, Mrs. Sherman, nobody bothers me and I'm happy. That's nice. But there are some people who are. So I just want to address that. And that is, years ago, people, this started way back, because I remember my mother in the 1950s having to defend herself as a homemaker. So there was a concerted effort years ago that began to erode the respect for homemaking and for homemakers. So it's been going on for quite a while. But years ago, somebody would say to her, you don't support your family, and you don't support your husband. And she would say, well, of course I do. I'm very supportive of my husband. I encourage him all the time, and I try to make life better for him at home so that he can go to work easily and help provide for us and everything. And they would not explain what they meant. And years later, I heard that word support again, and somebody said, you're not supportive of your family. And I thought, well, how in the world do they know that? I'm homeschooling them. I'm helping my husband in his work. I make sure that everybody is loyal and faithful to church, and I make it easy for them to follow biblical principles and all that. And then I found out with this that this is an attack on the fact that the housewife, the homemaker, does not work at a steady job outside the home for money. So she's not bringing in money. Now, in churches, this would be said by members of the church would come up and tell some woman that she wasn't very supportive. And what this means is she's also not contributing money, extra money, out of her earnings to the collection. So a lot of people became very sensitive about that, because here's these women who are at home and they are working at home with their families and taking care of them and homeschooling them. Well, then the church isn't getting this cut of money, this percentage of money that these women might voluntarily give. And so there's this, of course, I didn't know when someone said, oh, you're not very supportive, and I would jump around and say, oh, of course I'm supportive. Don't you think that everything I do is supportive of my husband? And they would say things like, you just need to wake up and smell the coffee. And they were saying, you're going to go downhill, your family's going to crash, you're going to lose everything, and if you're not more supportive. And of course, I was confused about that, but years later discovered that's one of those weasel words like do something, help out, and to make the woman feel guilty because she doesn't do something or help out or support. And that's all about money. It's basically about money. But a lot of things we need to explain to people is we do because it's our one thing I learned to use is to substitute words for other words, because there's certain words that you use that tend to stimulate other people's arguing. For instance, if you said, I need to clean my house, they would say, well, why do you need to clean your house? Why don't you make your kids do it? Why don't you, how much work does it take, to clean a house that it's easy for them? And stop saying things like that and say things like, this is my responsibility. This is my duty. This is my ministry. And I have to live a clean life before God, and I hope that He can help me be a good homemaker. Choose your words carefully and don't give them material. Don't give them things that they can argue about. So use the word duty, responsibility, ministry more, and you use the words work and things like that less because they are going to grab a hold of that and try to run you down. And it's very important that you keep your emotions stable and don't let people slay you with some of the things they're going to say. I tell you, I could tell you some stories. So it's very important to, and also substitute when people are around you and they're running you, and some of you even maybe have started homemaking late in life, or your children are going to public school and they're coming home and they're saying things like, I can't figure out what you do all day, Mom. And they don't think you are anything because they're, the society that they're in daily kind of demotes the homemaker and promotes anyone who's earning money. It's all about money. But if you'll turn it into a ministry, that seems to settle some people's minds. Turn it into ministry, a duty, and a responsibility. And you can always say, I gave up money so that I could look after my family, look after my children and my husband. I gave up the opportunity to think about money all the time. I took, this is so important that people understand. And you have to avoid letting people be personal with you that shouldn't be, because they can immobilize you, demoralize you, depress you, distract you, and devalue you. You don't want to go there. So recognize what they're doing. Recognize these words like support, do something, and help out. Because they have a definition that's totally different than what yours is. So I would also like to talk to you about the person that comes to see the homemaker. We had them way back in the 1950s. I mean, they were portrayed in some of the old comedies too. The person that wasn't a very good homemaker, wasn't dedicated to her home, would come over and stay the day with someone who was incredibly busy and, kind of take up some of her time. And I have had visits over the years, I would say maybe about 40 years ago when I first started out, or more, maybe 45, someone that was an acquaintance would come to the door and they had an argument for me, and they wanted me to give up being a homemaker and go to work. And knowing what they were going to talk about, I would say something like, well, come on in. I'm just in the middle of cleaning the toilet. Would you like to, you can talk to me, you can stand at the door and talk to me while I clean the toilet. Well, of course, they don't want to do that. So that stops that for a while. But the other thing is, if you don't want to approach it with humor, with dark humor, what you can do is approach it with spiritual things. And you can say, I'm doing this for the Lord, and I'm doing this for my family, and it is my duty, it is my responsibility, and will you pray for me that I can do it right, and I can do better, and that I can get some of these things done and that I can make the home so bacteria free that my children won't be sick all the time, or something like that, you know. And so now if I were speaking to you at a ladies meeting, you'd have to fly me in, find me a place to stay, and get out all my material and lay it out on tables for everyone, and then I'd have to spend the next day speaking to you, and I wouldn't get anything done at home, and neither would you. So this way, you get to listen and work as you go. So I hope that that's what you're doing, and this is one thing that is interesting to do, because I like on the video, because you can listen as you go and you don't have to watch. Now I have considered doing the you know, where you can where you have the people typing in and everything, but then everybody would have to stop and look what people are saying. And I've noticed in some of those things that the conversation goes so fast you can't keep up with it, and you have to keep watching. So this is an ideal way to encourage others, and you can also use your knowledge and practice being a good teacher with some of these naysayers that come around, and you can show them if they are busy trying to get information out of you or trying to criticize you. Take them into the kitchen and say, and I'm going to show you now how to cook a such and such, and here's what you do, and you pretend that you're a cooking show. And after a while, they'll get kind of tired of that, because they don't want to be around anyone professional. They want to target someone. Now there are people that will say, how come you can't stay out of trouble? Why are people so critical of you? That's not the question that should be asked. The question that should be asked is, why do some people become targets of other people's criticism? It's because there are people that sniff you out and think that you look a little bit innocent, and you're very helpful, and they will target you more than they will a tough person. So they will target you with criticism and that sort of thing. The other day, something interesting happened, and I thought I'd share it with you. And there was a lady, a couple, her and her husband, who had been very, very critical of me. And it was basically because I was a homemaker, and they claimed that I was costing the church money because I wasn't working outside the home. And so they had spread a lot of stuff about that, because all the ladies at church at that time had been working outside of the home, and of course they've been contributing to the coffers, you know. And so there was criticism of me because I was a preacher's wife, and most of the preacher's wives they'd known had worked outside the home. So this couple came into a restaurant where we were already seated, and we are halfway through with our dinner, and we were getting ready to leave. They had seated some space away from us, but they could see us, and they waved. And my husband, Mr. S., has become so gallant in his older age that he said to me, why don't you go to the car and check your phone, because I heard it ring. You might have an important call, and I'll say hello to these people. Because he knew that I would be kind of rattled by having to go and talk to them. He knew that it would upset me emotionally. Now, Mr. S knows that if someone upsets me, it's going to affect the way I cook. It's going to affect whether or not he's going to have a freshly ironed shirt. And so, because you can't focus, you know, if someone has rattled you. And like I said, they will immobilize you, demoralize you, depress you, distract you, and devalue you. So you have to be careful who you speak to. And Mr. S, who's become very sensitive to what will build me up the best, and of course we do in our home. We've always tried to build each other up. The children and I built each other up. We always focused on that. And the children didn't grow up with constant criticism, constant running down, constant punishment. We were building each other up. We're all brothers and sisters in Christ now, and we build each other up. And this is the way my husband and I are. We aren't just husband and wife. We're brothers and sisters in Christ. We treat each other the way you would treat another church member. And so he was protecting me and shielding me from some very critical people. And so he said, why don't you go to the car and check your phone? I thought I heard a call coming in. So he went over to talk to them and like a gentleman shook their hand. But, you know, he knows what they are like and how critical they are. But he shielded me from that. And I was very happy because I was able to go to our next stop, do a bit of grocery shopping, and they weren't in my head because I had not had to talk to them and they hadn't been able to target me in any way. So I just wanted to share that with you. And I don't think it's wrong to avoid situations that demoralize you, that take your mind off of your homemaking and your life as a homemaker. Now, another thing I wanted to talk about, but I'd like to leave you on a pleasant note, and that's why I know a lot of you enjoy the people part of these videos that kind of amuses you, because we all know these people that try to derail you sometimes in what you're doing. And so what I had suggested before is to be really careful not to get in an embroglio with some of these people that want to come across as quite friendly, but then will accuse you of something or criticize you. And you have to be really careful with some people because they will want to meet with you. And you go to this meeting, maybe you just think, I'm just going to go see this other lady who's got something to say, and you go to see, and the meeting is stacked, and it's full of other people. She's got all her friends. You were told not to bring anyone, so you didn't. You weren't told what it was about, so you just trusted her and went along. And what it is very interesting, and this has been going on for a long time. I think it probably started in the corporate world where people learned to bring other people down from their position so they could raise them up to a higher position and get rid of people. And it starts with rumor, and it starts with accusations that might not be true. But for one thing, it's interesting. If someone is accused of something, that's the first thing people believe. But then when evidence and proof of that that's not true comes along, their mind is so filled with the belief that it's hard for them to grasp the truth. I don't know what that's called, but they give you the squinty eye, you know, and they're confused because, and then of course you can tell them the truth, you convince them, and then they'll, as soon as you're out of the picture, they go back to believing the first lie they heard. And so what happens in these meetings and why I don't have them anymore, you know, if you want to talk to me and if I've offended you, just call me up and we'll talk about it on the phone and get it cleared up. And this is the reason they don't is because they want the drama of having a file on you with everything you've ever written or emailed them, and trying to find some offense in it. And they also, in a way, put you on trial. So they'll start putting you on trial. You'll be asked a lot of questions and then accused of things. And if you disagree, then they think you're hostile, or they think you're aggressive if you disagree, or if you try to defend yourself, then you're being aggressive or hostile. So they put you on trial and they accuse you, and then they judge you, and then they sentence you. And the sentence is really interesting because I have known of homemakers, housewives, who've been told that they must never speak about some things that these women are interested in. You must never speak about them. You must never be anywhere where I am, you know, and you can't come in within, you know, so many feet of me. And they put you on probation in a way. And I don't know if any of you have experienced this, but it's very interesting. And the first time it happens to you, you're like a deer in headlights wondering, what did I do, you know? And you can fall all over yourself asking for forgiveness for whatever perceived offense it was, and they will not forgive you because they enjoy keeping you in torture. They enjoy making you unhappy and not able to fix things, not able to reconcile. And they don't want to because they have to have this war going on all the time. Now, this is an interesting thing that you want to avoid if you possibly can, and it begins in the home. A lot of these people have come from homes where they played these games and were never corrected, and in fact went out into the world and caused havoc in business, havoc in churches, and havoc in other people's families. And so you want to make sure your children don't start this kind of stuff where they keep a list of wrongs and then they want to have a meeting, and they want to put this person on trial, and they want to punish them. And so you want to be careful that you don't do those things either. And I want to talk a little bit more to the women who are pestering other women for information. Make sure you're not doing it. Like I said, as far as the cost of things, maybe you and your husband have gone out to eat, and someone wants to know, where did you go? How much did it cost? They can actually go online and find the menu and find the cost of everything. And they don't have to ask you. What happens is, when you divulge these things, you're divulging what you spent, and you might think, well, I have nothing to hide. Everybody can see that menu online. They know how much it costs. But what you're doing is you're giving away a part of your own family doings and privacy, which you don't have to. That was a decision you and your husband made to go out and eat and to pay that much, and now you're having to justify it to someone who wants to know. And I have said, in America especially, it's extremely rude to inquire about what you spent, about what the price of something is. So you can always tell them, go online and find it yourself. I can't quite remember, and I'm not going to be too accurate. So you go search that yourself. Another thing too, in America especially, is that people don't like to be pestered with questions. I don't know where that comes from, but it's something to do with privacy or independence. If you're really independent, you don't need to go around relying on other people for answers. You can look it up. We used to have to look things up ourselves. Even when we wanted to know what a word meant, our mother would tell us to go look in the dictionary. So she was making us self-reliant and independent so that we could get our own information and not irritate others with constant questions. And if you ask someone a question and they don't know the answer, then they feel pretty foolish, and you might think ill of them. You might think they're not very well educated or they're not very smart. So really, it's best to look up your own answers. And this is what we were trained to do. For some reason in the U.S., we don't like too many questions, especially personal questions about money. I don't know, I haven't really looked that up to see why that is, but I know that the younger generation may think that just because they have nothing to hide, they can tell all this stuff. But when it comes to maybe purchasing a home or a holiday home or a vehicle, holiday vehicle or something like that, the person who has extracted financial information out of you is going to judge you and say, I don't see how on their salary they can afford that. They must have got extra money. They must have, something must have happened. And so you want to keep all these things to yourself. When I was growing up, even the children weren't allowed to know how much our father made. We weren't allowed to know how much was in savings. We weren't allowed to know how much things cost, because of course we went to school and you could talk about it at school, so they were very careful not to let any information out that could be spread. So this is important. This is very, very important to improve your own self-dignity as well. You don't go around asking questions about money and about people's lifestyles. You can ask questions like, how are you? How have you been? Would you like a cup of tea? And how's the world treating you? That sort of thing. And they can volunteer what they want, but it's their information. It's not yours. And I don't know if you have any opinion about this, but if you'd like to, please leave me a comment. And if you're not able to, please email me. I also want to leave you on a high note that your home and you have to take charge of your home, and you are the master of the homemaking routine. The Bible talks about homemakers, and it talks about how a woman is to guide the home and guard the home. And if you look up those words in the Greek, it's along the line of military. It's serious. So you are in charge of this, and so you have to use all of your intelligence. You develop more intelligence as you go, and you're in charge of it. And so what will you do with it? Will you make it a good thing, or will you sit and wait and let things happen? And one of the saddest things that I noticed in previous decades with previous generations is there were always people who would just wait for things to happen to them. They would never try to do anything. They would just wait and see what was going to happen. And that's an awful way to spend a life, don't you think? And you can make plans. You are supposed to. In fact, the Bible talks about people that have to have vision, have to have plans. And so you have plans for your home. And even if I write down all my plans, it does not mean they will always happen, but it's the good thing about making them is so good for my mind. It's so good for my optimism. It's so good for thinking about the future. We don't know if God's going to give us a future, but we will plan for it anyway. Do you remember, I believe God wants us to keep working, don't you? And so I hope that you have had great success today, that your house is looking good, that you've got it how you like it, and that it's getting more and more where you want to be there rather than be somewhere else. And I hope you're going to work around some of these people. Now, often someone will say to me, well, why even bother, figuring out how to maneuver around these people? Why don't you just cut them off? This is not always possible, especially if you're a Christian. It could be someone close to you in your family. It could be a church member. We have to treat some people gently, knowing they're at different stage of maturity. And some of them are just growing spiritually and don't know any better. And we have to show them a better way. And it's better to show them than to tell them off, because these days people take offense so easily. And I would not suggest that you write them a letter. Do not write any letters, because what they do, people that aren't mature will keep any correspondence, even an email, and they will keep it in a file. And eventually they're going to have a meeting with you, and they'll have a big file on you like you were going to a lawyer's office. So now this seems preposterous to some of you who are younger. But if you've ever been in business, these are some of the things that happen in business, and it kind of comes down into the home sometimes. And hopefully, no, you won't have those kind of experience. I've had a broad experience of life because of the type of work that my husband was in, and other businesses that we have been in, and different social circles that I've been in. And maybe it doesn't apply to you. And but I thought you would be amused by some of it, and be interested in that. And I wanted to tell you one more story about the free enterprise system and how it helped us when we were younger. We were in a big berry area where berries were growing wild all over the wilderness, and we picked berries. And there was a local berry company that was buying berries by the pound. So we would bring them in, and they would buy them and pay us. And we were teenagers, and this was wonderful to have a little money in our pocket. But then the berry company was hiring people to help make the preserves. And so if you were a certain age, you could work so many hours a day and earn money at the berry company. So while we sold our berries to the berry company, then we would work in the little factory that made the preserves and did the things to the berries so they could sell them, package them, that sort of thing, and made money there. And then, we helped process these berries, and we earned a little extra money. Then we would go to work in the local grocery store that actually sold the berries. So there were just different ways that you could work so many hours, and it was usually seasonal, just seasonal. You wouldn't be working these things full time. But I just wanted to explain that to you. Now we can translate that for the children at home today, and that is, if you can make something, teach them that they can make something and perhaps sell it. And I think you would do it to your relatives and friends and not send your children out to work. But that's just a story from the olden days I wanted to tell you, and I bet some of you had that same experience. And I know of a lady who kind of did that. She went and picked apples, and then she went to the company that was processing the apples and got a job there processing the apples. And then she went to work at a bed and breakfast that sold the apple sauces and the different forms of preserved apples. And she also, like at the counter where they sold those things, so she waited on people, but then she also got to work at the bed and breakfast making beds and serving meals and cleaning and that sort of thing. So I just think there is, if we could teach our children about opportunity, this would be very helpful. As I told you before, my father hired us, we older children, on his boat, and he would pay us at the end of the season, at the end of the fishing season, a couple of $100 each. And of course, my mother was so clever that she just made us pay for everything that we used or needed, in, with that money. And then after he paid us, then we were allowed to peddle certain amounts of these of the fish and the crab from door to door in the village that we lived in. And then after that, we worked in the cannery shelling the shrimp, and then we worked in the store selling the shrimp, and it just went on and on and on. And we always had money that we needed to get by on. And we children, growing up even in these hard times, still had nice clothes to wear, and we did not want to go around looking like we were poor. As a matter of fact, when we got what's called the missionary barrels, and that was these barrels of clothes that were sent up north from the South 48, we dig through them and then pass the box on to somebody else in a neighboring homestead. We dig through them and us girls would take the blouses that had the pearl buttons on them, because we wanted to look, to rise above. We didn't want to appear to be poverty-stricken. And one of the reasons that we never wanted to appear to be poverty-stricken, because in those days it was considered inexcusable, because there were places you could work and there was money about, and if you were doing it right and you were not wasting your life and you were working, you could also have nice things. And to show and to act like you were, and to not be well dressed was considered inexcusable. You weren't supposed to look poor. Now that is hard for people to understand, because the current culture sells poor things. They sell torn jeans so that you will look like you are really poor, or that you're working so hard up in the lumber yards that your jeans are torn. And so, but there's a whole different attitude from the olden days that we had, that we might have been cash poor or land poor, but we always were careful about our appearance. And because of that, then we were able to work for other people, or we were considered more reliable if we looked fairly presentable. And so this is how we came up in our own little world. And so, ladies, I hope that you're having a lovely day. And I want to say one more thing in parting, and that is, I know that a lot of families have prayer at night before everyone goes to bed at the end of the day, and that's wonderful. But I have to say that my experience with that is I was always half gone mentally by the time everybody got around to those evening prayers, and just like nodding away, and they weren't sinking in my head and everything. I have always wanted to change that to morning prayers, and especially you people who are homeschooling, that have your families still there in the morning. I think that the morning prayers would set the tone for the day and help you succeed in God's will during the day. So write and tell me what you think about that, and please leave me a comment, because that's what gives me my ideas for the subject matter. I hope you have a lovely time. I hope you get a lot done, and God bless you. Thank you for your prayers for me, and for your donations, and for all the things that it enables me to do. And I hope to be back soon. So I'll see you next time. Bye.